I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. I'm Saeed Khan, and of course, another week in America means another week of not only a lot of news, but I'm sure a very fecund group of schmucks of the week to talk about later. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and talk about who's joining us today. We have former WDIV anchor and probably the most famous Kansas Jayhawk since Gale Sayers. Is that fair to say? Devin Scillian.
Hi, friends.
We've got two of our three attorneys so far. We got Joel Sklar and Steve Fishman. We have PR specialist Beverly Watts, labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So, you know, the Bay City Rollers once had a song called Saturday Night, but I think that the current administration has taken Saturday Night Massacres to a whole different level. We have the firing of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, United States Air Force General Charles Q. Brown. This seems to just be, and we're joined by our third attorney, Bill Seikaly, because over here we need that much legal representation.
Sorry, guys, technical problem. Camera wouldn't work.
Well, the question is, who are you going to sue? So we have the firing of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and a few different rumors going around. One, of course, is the suggestion that Trump did this because he felt that General Brown, African American, was in fact elevated to that position or promoted to that position as a DEI hire. It seems as though the dog whistling is no longer just for people outside our audible range anymore. So what are we to make of this? Yeah, Steve.
What are we to make of it? How hard is that? What are we going to make of it? He's black, so he's fired. What are you talking about?
Right, it's not surprising.
I mean, we're going to sit here and debate about what the guy is thinking?
Right.
That's what it is. He's black. If he'd have been a Jew, he'd have fired him too. So what? That's the way to look at it.
And they got rid of the woman as well. So
yeah, that's right.
Clean sweep.
Well, on top of that, I mean, you have Department of Defense directives of essentially getting rid of all trans people as well. So it seems as though there's quite the purge going on. Devin.
I was going to say on this example, I think there might be an alternate explanation. Clearly, DEI is, in fact, I saw a video today about about a medical group who found themselves on the outs because they used the word diversity in describing the way that your ear works.
Wow.
You know, the search engine found diversity and shut that down because it was talking about, it was just the wrong word to use. But so I certainly won't defend it. But in this case, in what's going on with the military, I think in the first Trump term, he often found himself stymied by a number of folks who were either in the military or former military. General Milley, HR Master, John Kelly. And I think he is trying to clear the decks with more like-minded, is the kind way of putting it, malleable.
Lackeys.
Yeah, however you, yes, I think that might speak more to what's going on here rather than strict DEI movement.
I mean, this is almost as though he's paranoid that, God forbid, the generals might stage a coup d'etat, that he's clearing the ranks. Bill.
Yeah, with all due respect, Devin, two things can be true at the same time.
Fair.
And I don't disagree with you, but let's remember that these people took an oath not to Donald Trump, but to the Constitution, and that it's their lack of fealty, it's their blind allegiance that he objects to. Now, he assumes that anybody who's black probably also takes that position because there are so few black people that would be in his sphere of influence. I mean, you not only have to take the knee if you're black or you're a woman, you've got to do something else, I think, to get into his real inner circle. I mean, I find this, by the way, kudos to your editorial in the Free Press, your commentary in the Free Press. I thought it was very well done. But I think it speaks exactly to what's going on. People have got to start standing up to it. Loyalty does not mean that you go along with anything these people say and anything that Donald Trump says. And this is terrifying to me.
I agree with Devin and Bill together. I mean, collectively, his first term, he realized he had so many impediments because he was told to hire people with integrity who had experience. Now he's got all these lackeys. I mean, you know, Kash Patel has no business. I mean, even William Barr had said, over my dead body, is that guy going to be the deputy director?
But he lied. It's not over his dead body.
We have Meg Seth as the head of defense. I mean, I think Marco Rubio's got experience. I mean, he's not out of bounds in terms of an appointment there, but there are so many others, you know, who are just not qualified, but they're going to roll over and do whatever the fuck he says.
It's a cabinet of sycophants. You know,
and he's figured out. He's lying. The coup is complete. He's got the Supreme Court. He's got both houses. You know, both chambers, and he's got all the right people in place. He's no longer, the FBI is no longer at the top, has any integrity. You know,
and he has the owner of Washington Post is telling him, I mean, if anybody thinks that this Jeff Bezos meddling in the Washington Post editorial side is going to stop with the editorial page, I've got some land in Florida to sell you. I mean, it's going to go on, and Bezos has shown from the very beginning, or not from the very beginning of the second Trump administration, how willing he is to put on the knee pads and do whatever Donald Trump wants in the interest of growing Amazon into even more of a behemoth than it already is. He's got,
and I agree with you. I agree with everyone, but I don't think anyone's really surprised, are we? But at the same time, we must continue to stand up. We cannot sit on the sidelines. We cannot be afraid. We cannot, even if it's like you're outside the house throwing eggs at the window, you got to continue, just go get a couple more dozen eggs, but you got to keep it up.
That's a lot of money right now.
I know, right?
I mean,
now, Joel, I need to provide a caveat for you. All of this concordance of opinions, I think, is because everybody's afraid of having diversity of opinion on the panel. So I want you to shake it up. Diversity is not a word here.
But it just seems to me that we're an amoral, you know, everything's amoral. Morality doesn't mean anything. Ethics don't mean anything. Truth doesn't mean anything. Laws don't mean anything. Everything's transactional. It's a quid pro quo. That's the world we live in. So any discussion about some underlying motivation other than transactional, how do I make my pockets fuller? How do I take money out of yours? That's all this thing is. There is no, I don't think there's any great thought behind it. I don't think there's any great conservative ideology behind it. It's purely transactional to benefit Trump, those who support Trump, to maintain power, to maintain a dynasty, because this motherfucker, he's never leaving. He'll die, but hopefully then he'll leave. But he ain't leaving. That's his intent right now, because laws don't matter. The Constitution doesn't matter. All that matters is Trump.
I was going to say something about the Bezos thing. I think it's, I was seeing David Marinus, who doesn't write full time for the Post anymore. He says, I'm no longer going to write for the Post as long as Bezos owns it. And it puts, I still have a lot of friends at the Post, a lot of integrity, are very talented, and they're put in a really shitty position of being embarrassed to be working for a publication that they were once so proud to work for.
As they should be.
Yeah.
Well,
Did you see
didn't realize we had already started Schmuck of the Week. You're stealing my guy, but go ahead.
Oh wait, we almost get in fist fights at the end.
You know, but part of me kind of believes that this little group in our conversation sounds like the background chatter in one of the really good Woody Allen movies from the 70s, like Manhattan or something, you know, where somebody's like, well, I read a very convincing op-ed in the New York Times today, and I just think it's going to heads are going to roll, you know, and it's like heads ain't rolling, and all of our bleeding over here is just noise at this point, but I'm still staying on the group. But
you know what, Nancy, I know you kind of try to downplay that there's so many alternatives for for news sources now. But people say, "Oh, I get my news from the podcast," and "Oh, I get my news from the Daily Show," or "I get this or that." That news is coming from certain sources still, the traditional sources, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times.
Very much is.
According to the White House, not the AP.
But did you look at did you see yesterday when the Pam Bondi allegedly released the Epstein files and they picked 3 hand-picked idiots, some right-wing influencers, and called them into the White House, or into the Justice Department, wherever her office is, and and handed them some 3-ring binders. And I'm sure these people, this was the most important they've ever felt in their lives. But look at some of the followers of these people. They have millions of people who look to them to tell them what is going on in the world. You're absolutely right. The news that comes that we see on the Daily Show in a comedy format, originated with a legit reporter at a legit newspaper or broadcast outlet. But I think we're we're at least a half step beyond that right now. We're into like influencer thing where they're just feeding this shit directly into the garbage pipeline, and it's coming out at the other end, and that constitutes news. So sorry, rant over.
Yeah, Barb.
I think that there is a lot of the people that are leaving the major papers are doing some really good work. The Contrarian and the Bulwark, the whole thing, Substack is right now like a major news magazine.
But you have to pick
you
your
have
own.
to look, you have to pick your own. But I mean, we've got to start somewhere. And I've got the Washington Post, which we canceled, but they won't send us our money back. So there it is on my screen, pissing me off every day. And here on the front page, exclusive: FBI investigating Trump's claims of fraud in Biden. And in tiny letters underneath, harsh findings on Trump's aid freeze kept secret. Now, this has been going on even before Bezos came out and said that he was doing this. This has been a creep, and it's horrible. And it's why people are leaving the New York Times in droves. Mm-hmm. And that's why people, after this announcement, the Washington Post is going to lose a whole lot of subscribers. And if you read any of the comment section, it's really the funniest thing. It's because that's all anyone can talk about. But we have to start reaching out, because we are not getting the news. We're getting corporate, broadsheets that I recognize that from working with Gannett. It's I see what they're doing, and it's corporate.
You have that happening in the broadsheets where people are feeling compelled to leave, and then you have television like MSNBC where shows are just simply getting cut, like Joy Reid's and others in prime time. They
all happen to be brown or black or female. What a coincidence!
And Muslim when it comes to Ayman and Mehdi Hasan. Bill.
Yeah, I find all this to be an incredibly important conversation, but I think we need to go back even further. I mean, look at. I think the problem isn't, I can't remember if it was Joel or Allan who raised it, isn't just how much control Trump now has. I think we've got to go back a step further, which I think goes to Nancy and Barb's position about where people are getting their media from. The fact of the matter is we've lost most of America. I mean, Trump still has a large swath of America, whether you say he has a majority. I mean, look, I know it was a narrow victory and all that stuff. I get the numbers. The fact of the matter is still a large percentage of the American population no longer share our basic principles, our basic truth, our basic facts even. This notion of alternative facts that have become so popular that they just ignore the basic mores. I mean, you got the Tate brothers who have 10 million followers on Twitter.
Exactly.
I have a question.
The fact of the matter is that as long as that many people in this country have nothing in common with one another, who aren't talking to one another, there are people on our side who wouldn't turn on Fox and would never look at any of this alternative media, and there are people on the other side who would never look at MSNBC. The fact of the matter is we don't have any common shared values. How do you maintain a republic? Somebody said he's got the Supreme Court. I don't know if that's true yet. I worry about it. I'm curious about what Steve and Joel have to say about that. This order staying the ruling on the aid programs disturbs me, but it's short term. They've got until today to respond to the application. I think we're going to know in a couple weeks what's going to happen.
But we have to be real. Yeah. No, I was going to say, if we look back, it's been a while now since news really was held to the standard of being factual. It's been going that trend for being entertainment for a while now.
But
as social media.
But that's how Trump got in.
Yes, exactly.
Trump made it that way.
Exactly. It's sound bites,
I've got a question for Devin. Tell us about your view of local TV news and the impact and how many people are relying on TV news.
Well, fortunately, local television news is still the most trusted news that people get generally when they're polled. The problem here is, though, that it's become the victim of just like every newsroom, whether it's newspapers, radio, television, it all trickles down, and everybody is fighting over the same scraps now in our very highly fragmented digital streaming world. And so and the one thing I think that has held local television news in good shape in people's esteem is we really don't delve very much into opinion. We just don't. That's just not our space. Now, I had a Sunday morning, news program where other people, spent a lot. It was built on the opinions of other people, but not on mine. And so I think that that's been a place where people have respected. But we are really at and you guys can get me going on a 5-hour talk that I have on, yes, journalism is a business, but it's the only business mentioned by name in the Constitution. This is a very vital part of who we are as Americans, of a functioning democracy. And when I see people like the Associated Press, which has the imprimatur of being, I think, probably one of the most reliable news organizations ever, ushered out of White House proceedings because they refused to go along with calling it the Gulf of America. That's a really dark day. And Barb, to your point earlier, I feel the same way about the Washington Post, but I don't know what to do. I haven't canceled my subscription because I know where that falls. I don't hurt Jeff Bezos. I hurt reporters in the and editors in the newsroom. And that kills me because I used to work for the Washington Post company. When I came to Channel 4, we were a post-Newsweek station, and it was a big part of why I came here, because I delivered the Washington Post when I was a kid, and it kills me what's going on there.
I agree. I've had a lot of friends reach out to me and say, should I cancel a Washington Post? I say, look, it's obvious you want to express anger. I said, I'm not going to cancel it. I have a lot of good friends there who are still trying to do good journalism. I say, if you really feel something like, don't order Amazon or cancel your Amazon Prime or whatever it is. The Washington Post it's not going to hurt Jeff Bezos as much as it's going to hurt the reporters who are making a living. And there's still a lot of outstanding reporters and writers at the Post.
Did you see that Jeff Bezos plans to send his fiance up in the next Amazon rocket?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this is some kind of backdoor way of getting rid of her?
Apparently
of the rocket, where it's
she's like Laika, the Russian space dog sent out with no way to get back.
The moon, Alice.
Terrible.
Well, apparently, Nancy, according to the latest memoir, Melania is quite lonely.
Yeah.
So maybe there's that. Barb.
I believe in boycott, because it's really, in many ways, it's the last power that we have is our dollars and our eyes and our clicks and our if you can keep the Washington Post and then you can cancel your Amazon Prime, but that's hurting people that work in warehouses and people that deliver and people that do these things that really, that's a job that they can have. So, I mean, unfortunately, there is an economic impact, which is kind of the point. I actually do respect reporters quite a bit. You know, I worked at the newspaper for 20 years, and even though I was off on the other side, I was on the streets with reporters for 4 years, people that I couldn't cherish more in my life and have more respect for. But I will never buy either one of those papers ever again as long as I live, because fuck them. If you'll excuse the expression, but I mean, today is the big economic boycott.
Yes.
Who's it going to hurt? I don't know, but I'm not spending a dime today. And this is the only time I'm going to be on Facebook for the day I'm getting off. And I'm not giving Meta my clicks. You know, our data is worth more than our money.
So just on that point, first of all,
I agree.
I keep my Post subscription because I love the Garfinkel sales flyers. For those of you from Washington, you know how off base I am on that. But totally. I wanted to make the point though about that one of our viewers had a comment regarding the privatization of the media doing untold damage. If I could just provide a corrective to that, I don't think it's the privatization of the media, because these were private companies that were owned by families. Whether it was Katharine Graham's family with the Washington Post, whether it was the Chandler family in the LA Times, whether it was the Ox-Sulzbergers of the New York Times. What we have now is corporatization, which I think is a little bit different animal than privatization. Because, of course, the alternative to that would be the government and state-run media, which is something that, especially in this current climate, would be problematic. So, Allan.
No, I think the better part of that comment goes to the removal of the fairness doctrine.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I think I think the removal of the fairness doctrine and Citizens United have done more to destroy our democracy than any two issues in our recent time. And I'm reminded by my children all the time, Dad, neither one of those are all that recent. But I think those are terrible problems.
Allan.
I was going to say, when I was at the Washington Post under the Graham family, there was a sacredness to not interfering. And I'll even say with Deadline Detroit, with Pete Carmanos, we wrote a lot of stories about Beaumont, and the CEO of Beaumont started threatening him. And I remember sitting down with him one day, and he was telling me, yeah, he's doing this. I went to lunch, and now he's threatening me. And I said, really, I'm really sorry to give you heartburn. He says, are you kidding? I love it.
Well, once upon a time, these were glorified in movies like The Post. Well, you mentioned quid pro quo.
That's the press, and there's nothing you can do about it. The great Humphrey Bogart line. Anyway,
you mentioned the whole idea about quid pro quo, and right now, as we speak, in Washington, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine is seemingly in negotiation or final negotiations about a deal regarding at least half of Ukraine's mineral resources, in a deal, some might call it a shakedown, that the Trump administration is enacting, worth $500 billion. Now, Zelensky has even said that we have video.
Hey, speaking of double crosses, tomorrow Trump's meeting with President Zelensky of Ukraine, who's coming to the United States. Trump claims they've reached a deal to create what's being called a reconstruction investment fund. Basically, they will give us access to their valuable minerals in exchange for us not letting Putin kill them all. In other words, the guy who was impeached for trying to extort Ukraine tomorrow is planning to do it again in front of everyone.
I mean,
very true.
Once upon a time, this was just the exclusive domain of somebody named Corleone, but it is just wide open in plain sight for everybody. I mean, to Zelensky's credit, he said that he would be willing to step down, but he then offered his own quid pro quo, saying if you allow Ukraine to join NATO. So, of course, I think that's going to be a problem, because I think it has to be a unanimous vote, and the U.S. would probably, in this current administration, block it. Bill.
Yeah, I really want to talk about this mineral deal because I think this is classic Trump. First of all, this was Zelensky's idea, and for good reason. One, thought this would appeal to Trump. Two, they really can't afford to pull these minerals out of the ground. First of all, Russia has been bombing the hell out of the area. They don't have any energy in the area. They don't have any electricity in the area except for a couple hours a day. They need America to come and invest. And guess what? Zelensky's smart enough to say, if America had equipment in there, if America had workers in there, the Russians probably wouldn't be bombing this area. And we'd be willing to give up 50% because we're not getting much out of it at all right now. I think Trump has finessed this into being, I beat the hell out of Zelensky to get this. But I think like many of his deals, he's not getting anything that somebody wasn't willing to give him.
Right.
I think this is a Zelensky move. Now, he makes it look like a bully. And I think his original demand that they get all of it was nonsense. But the deal that it looks like they're making was the deal that Zelensky offered the first time. And again, Trump takes credit for it and he'll get away with it. It's nonsense. And by the way, there's no real confirmation that they have all these rare earth minerals there. These are based on maps from the end of World War II and tests that were done right after World War II.
Right.
They may be there. I hope they're there. I think it would be good for both Ukraine and the United States. But I think that him getting credit for this is just nonsense.
This reminds me of in 1942 when we went to the French and said, we're going to help you beat the Germans, but only if you give us half of your wine vineyards and cheese. Oh, wait, that didn't actually happen. I'm sorry. Never mind.
Devin, I would have held out for the butter.
We have a long history of doing that, don't we, Devin?
What does it say, Devin, that French President Emmanuel Macron was in the White House and responding to a question actually had to school our president on a factual error, to put it euphemistically?
Well, I don't know how many times in both of those meetings, the one with Macron and then the one yesterday with Keir Starmer, how many times Trump repeated that the U.S. has given $300 to $350 billion to Ukraine, and it's 120 or so. But people, that's that. I can't remember who said it earlier. The fatigue of correcting things it has weighed down on people. Even do it anymore because that was crazy. But yes, to see Macron reach over and actually grab him by the hand, I can't believe that this is where we are. I don't want to see. In fact, my schmuck of the week every week until he gets out of Ukraine should be Vladimir Putin, and I just can't believe that we're treating him as a negotiating partner rather than as a war criminal. I don't understand.
And did you notice, Devin, that when he reached over by the hand, it exposed two things. One is the bruise on Trump's hand, which the White House is now scrambling to explain. And the other was that Macron's hands were bigger. So
Macron looked so happy when he was correcting him too. He just kind of lit up. That was so good.
I can't remember
Well,
where
I was the only one that noticed that.
I can't remember where I read this morning, but somebody wrote an article about how this has become the foreign leaders' way of putting Trump in his place. And they say three things. One, they compliment him. Then they reach over and touch him. And then three, they correct him. And it's I will tell you, it's been very effective this week.
Bill, for an uninformed narcissist who's a germaphobe, which of those three is the most vexing?
He looks like he's going to pass out every time. It's beautiful.
Joni just sent me a message. It was Lawrence O'Donnell. We read the same article this morning.
So Europe is starting to push back on Trump, and particularly when he said that the EU was useless and that it basically was a creation just to screw us over, is I think the exact words. But at the same time, there is a rise of the right in Europe. Germany had its elections just over the weekend. And while the far-right party of AfD did not win the most seats, it did come in second. And the Christian Democrat Party of, let me see if I can get this now, Joachim Friedrich Joseph Martin Merz, has come into power.
Very impressive.
There you go.
That BBC pronunciation guide has paid for itself many, many times.
And cue the Deutschland über alles in the background at will. But the fact that we're finding the rise of the right, and there is some tacking by Merz as well as Macron in the last election, that he was able to elude the rise of Marine Le Pen and her far right, and also Keir Starmer in England with Nigel Farage. I mean, there is this encouragement by the Trump administration, especially Vice President Vance at the Munich Security Conference. How does this look moving forward? Are we going to now just simply have to deal with the rise of the right in the West?
Fishman.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Fish.
He hasn't said a word. Speak.
I think he's watching a movie.
I don't want
Purple Rain.
Purple Rain never was the last movie I saw.
We're talking about the rise of the right in Europe.
Turn the movie off, Steve.
Steve, it's a billable hour whether you're talking or not, right?
That's the one thing I've never done was bill for hours in 52 years. No, I mean, I don't think it's surprising at all, because you're seeing it everywhere. You're seeing it from whether it's here, whether it's Germany, or whether it's Israel, for God's sake. I mean, this has been going on for 15, 20 years. And what's the bugaboo for everybody? Immigrants. Don't you see? That's the problem. The Germans don't want that. Nobody wants immigrants. And I'm not surprised that, and I do believe the same thing that we have here. You guys were talking before about who are you getting your information from? I'm sure it's the same thing in Europe. There's got to be those same kind of outlets, right, that are providing misinformation, and people are nodding their heads and going, yeah, okay. And my solution is always the same, right? You guys have heard it 100 times. What we suffer from in this country, and maybe it's the same thing there, is a lack of integration, not necessarily by race, but by ethnicity and by income and by everything else, because it's a lot harder to hate people when the guy next door to you, who happens to be whatever, Arabic, is the same as you. You go out and you shoot baskets with your kid and you go to work, and that's where I think this all stems from. People like Trump and these right-wing people are able to stoke those fires of ethnocentrism, I guess you'd call it. And the people who accept it are those who don't know anybody who's not like them. And I think that's a big deal. That's what
as long as it doesn't affect them.
Precisely.
Okay, let's see. Forrest is saying, no way we win the Revolutionary War without the French helping us. True. And you mentioned something about Costco and the $1.50 hot dog. It gets better. They're switching to Coke, not Pepsi. Bill, before we go to a commercial.
I want to commend Steve. I thought that was great, Steve. And but just to add on, people have distorted DEI. People now think, oh, anybody who's black, anybody who's a woman, anybody who's a minority, that must be a DEI hire. Fact of the matter is diversity, equity, and inclusion was designed mainly to say we are all, every single one of us are better off if we're around people who are different from us. It raises all of us up. If we're around people who have physical disabilities, if we're around people of different colors, around people of different sexes, it makes us all better. But that's all been distorted now. Now it's to let the minorities take over the majority.
You know what I think? If you were to pay, I think you understand the objection to DEI much better if you look at the Trump children. And you think of like Donald, who is a Nepo baby, looking at his offspring and thinking to himself, if 3/5 of these people were not white males, they would probably be like hustling 3-card Monte on a street corner and fucking that up too, right? I mean, honestly, I really do feel like some of these guys are just like, well, if we hire black people, where are my mediocre children going to work? How are they ever going to earn a living for themselves? It's like, well, You know, I mean, look at Don Jr. for Christ's sake. That guy is like a walk. I mean, he's like a walking Coke spoon for God's sake. You know, his eyes are always like squinty, and he's always like, you know, and he did that one. He got caught on video on that one move, taking his finger out of his pocket and rubbing it around his gun.
Right.
I haven't seen that since the 70s, but I know what it is.
That's what it would be riled up on the last day of Black History Month. I refuse.
Nancy, you're clearly going to a cashless society, because otherwise it really should have been a rolled up 10-pound note. But okay. Allan, let's go to a commercial.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
By the way,
go ahead, Allan.
I was going to play a video just to show how they're demonizing all these federal employees who are, you know, doing good work. And here's.
And then, because there isn't enough dumb happening, we have the Klan mom, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who doesn't seem to think federal workers have any value at all.
Those are not real jobs producing federal revenue. Those jobs are paid for by the American tax people. Federal employees do not deserve their jobs. Federal employees do not deserve their paychecks.
Wait, aren't you a federal employee?
I'm the tax people. Cool.
Tax people, yeah.
Tax people is great.
There's at least 3 of you who should be getting those space lasers armed right now. No? Allan, Steve, Joel, come on. Don't make me fetch.
I mean, it happened in Wisconsin where a while ago when the governor, that I can't remember his name now, when he was demonizing public employees.
Scott Walker.
Yeah, people started hating firefighters and police. They thought of them as mooches for taking public money. They thought of school teachers as, and they demonized them. And now they're trying to demonize all these people like USAID who are doing some miraculous work. And they're being demonized as horrible people and basically thieves for taking public money. It's insane.
Not to mention dealing with Ebola.
Yeah.
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 By the way, they've discovered another coronavirus in China, so stay tuned for whether we hear about that with the communiques and you know, even with the measles outbreak in Texas. Barb.
You know, Bob and I got on our car, got so excited when all of the municipal workers in Wisconsin took over the Capitol. We jumped in our car and we drove to Madison. Right. It was like we just had to be there. It was so compelling. And I have never in my life experienced anything as wonderful as the 3 days that we spent walking around the capital of Wisconsin. And it was people that cared about their jobs, that cared about Wisconsin, cared about the schools. Cops were walking through singing Solidarity Forever, something that I never thought I'd see in my life. It was like this moment that was so incredible. And, you know, anybody that has a job, really at the end of the day, you care about it. Most of us out here, we care about what we're doing. We care about the quality of our work. And it's so insulting for a troglodyte like Marjorie Taylor Greene to say these things. I mean, it's funny that she can't even say the word taxpayers. I don't think she knew it. But, you know, here we are, and we have like national parks people. We have fire, you know, in the firefighters out in California, they're going to be decimated. What the fuck are we going to do without people? It makes me just so insane.
We are all on our own at this point. I mean, I don't know if anybody heard, but RFK Jr. told a lie in the last couple weeks. He lied to that Dr. Senator Cassidy in Louisiana to get his confirmation vote. And he said he would not interfere with vaccines at all. So Dr. Cassidy probably quivering with his balls way up in his abdominal cavity, just said, "Okay, I'll vote for you," and he did. And now they canceled the meeting to choose next year's or this next season.
Anybody who didn't know, including Cassidy, that he was lying at the time, simply wasn't paying attention.
Exactly.
You get the Susan Collins Award for being completely.
I'm very concerned, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on this young man.
But I don't think we're alone. And I don't, and I believe in solidarity.
So why are his supporters starting to get a little bit upset? Well, one reason that they give is that they voted for Trump because they said he would bring prices down on day one. That was his claim. He said it over and over again. And now on day 38, they still think things are too expensive. Somewhere in Delaware, Joe Biden is shaking his head, chuckling to himself and thinking, why did I come into this room?
Well,
and have a president that cares more about the country than that guy. He shouldn't have gone the second time, but we'll never have one like him again.
So locally, we had a couple of conventions over the weekend. We had the Republican convention, and they chose a chair who is not endorsed by President Trump. So Misha, what was her name? Misha Maddock. Mishan Maddock. Had to give way to State Senator Jim Runstead coming in. How do you see this shaping up the GOP, and especially going into the 2026? Devin.
Quick question first for our attorneys. So it was 2020 that Mishan Maddock was trying to pass herself off as an elector right at the Capitol. How is that case not been adjudicated yet? She is still facing charges for fraud, and here we are now, and she was running for this. Can somebody explain to me how is this? This is like an everlasting gobstopper of a case.
Mm-hmm. Well, is her case in state court or is it there?
It's in state court, I think.
State court, I believe. Yeah, Nessel charged her.
It was Nessel.
Oh, that could explain it right there. Generally, the reason I ask state court or Fed is because it's not unusual for federal cases to go on for a long time. They have superseding indictments. Other people got brought in. Somebody takes a plea. Someone's cooperating. Things can go on for a long time. I don't know why it would be there unless, and I don't know this, the case could be charged. It might have gone, maybe it went to preliminary exam. Maybe there was a decision. Maybe the side that didn't like the decision appealed that decision. Maybe it went to the circuit court. Maybe they made a ruling. Maybe it's at the Court of Appeals. I don't know. But for state court case to be 5 years later, you're saying it happened in 2020 and it was charged in 2020, Devin, or no?
No.
It was
charged after.
Probably.
Yeah, the charges were after. The charges came later. I'm sorry.
Yes. See, that's the other
Charges came in 2022, I think it was.
Or 2020 was when it happened, but yes, okay.
Because you have statute of limitations, you don't have to charge right away. The feds, most of the time, don't charge right away unless they catch a bank robber, right at the scene. They stick and they grab them. Most of their cases, the ones that I have, they might not be charged for 2-3 years sometimes. So that matters too. But it all depends on the individual judge's docket. If it's already on a docket and it's not somewhere in the appellate process, if that case is on a judge's docket in a circuit court, you'd have to ask that judge as to how.
She had the Donald Trump endorsement going into that weekend and that convention, but the only thing I can assume was that she was caught. There were a number of Republicans there that thought, well, we don't need a state chairperson who ends up being charged, or
I don't think they care. Also, the guy, I don't know who that guy is from Adam's House Cat that won. But I read some of the commentary. He did not remind me of a big limousine liberal, that's for sure. His commentary was exactly the same as hers, except he's not yet charged with a crime.
Plus, and remember, she was the one who made the motion to make it unanimous. I mean, he is as far to the right. This was a race to the bottom.
Right.
Believe me. I mean, they're trying to spin it as, oh, we don't want the same thing that made Barb so happy when the Republicans imploded under the last
Christina Caramo, yes.
Chair crazy, I wanted to call her. but this is not the traditional Republicans, what we used to call traditional Republicans, coming back into power.
No,
this guy is as far to the right as anybody else in the Republican Party.
Don't discount the mean girl factor too. I think that Michonne Maddock has been going around insulting people. She's been high on the hog because she probably has Trump's cell phone number, whatever. And she's been to Mar-a-Lago, blah blah blah. And I think she has gotten a little big for her britches, maybe. And some people just wanted to punish her for just being a mean girl. So,
and don't forget all the girl on girl crime, Nancy.
The girl on girl crime, yeah.
Allan.
I mean, I think she's toxic even in the Republican Party. During her reign, the Republicans did not do well in Michigan. And so even though Trump backed her, I think it was enough that people really disliked her so much that they didn't go with Trump's recommendation.
Yeah, I mean, the first goal is to raise money or the first job duty is to raise money and win elections. And I don't know how she did with the money raising, but she didn't win in many elections.
She left the party in shambles too.
Yeah, sure.
So there was also the Michigan Democratic Party convention at downtown at the RenCen, and I was actually there. I was asked to come in for a side event. I must say that when I broke the fourth seal, and the horsemen came flying out, it seemed quite in disarray. So here we are now, about 2 years off from the primaries and the midterm elections, and with a gubernatorial race, an open Senate seat, and it seemed as though there is still quite a lot of fractures and some reconciliations that really haven't happened. I went to the 6th Congressional District meeting that was chaired by Debbie Dingell, and Dana Nessel was soundly booed for having acquiesced to the Board of Regents from the University of Michigan and charging the protesters during the Gaza encampment, and people yelling, stop the charge, and then of course there were counter shouts that were going back. I don't know if some of the underlying issues regarding what brought the Democrats to their situation in 2024 really have been resolved. Is anyone hearing any scuttlebutt to the contrary? I'll take that as a no. Bill.
I'm a kind of traditional Democrat and fairly involved in the Democratic Party, but I'll tell you that.
Hey, Devin, by the way, have you known how long Bill has been a traditional Democrat? Have you seen him from back in the day?
This is my punishment.
Come on.
This is my punishment. I endure it weekly.
Do we have to? Poor Bill.
Yeah, can we not? Let me go.
Well, we haven't seen it in 6-7 days. Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
These are my friends. I have a host of friends.
That's what my political mentor used to say: if you're in politics and you want a friend, get a dog.
Yeah. Anyway,
I want to challenge, Saeed, your premise that what put the Democrats in the position that they're in.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we do have some fundamental problems in the Democratic Party, but what put the Democratic Party in the position it's in is this move to the far right and the success of the far right. It's this fracture that we're talking about. The Democratic Party is always, if you go as far back as Will Rogers, his great line about, I'm not a member of any organized political party, I'm a Democrat.
Sure.
It's a big tent party, lots of people in, and so we have these disputes and these territorial problems within the party. But the Republican Party, or the MAGA Party, as I prefer to now call it, and the Democratic Party are now so extreme. What we saw go on in Germany is what's going on in the United States. And I think that that's the problem that the Democratic Party has. we don't play by the same rules as the Republican Party. I mean, my son and I have this great debate about I don't want to use the tactics of Trump. I don't want to use the tactics of my enemy. And he says, then you're not going to win.
Your son is right. Your
Yeah.
son is absolutely right. And I felt that
Bill,
when I go ahead.
But Bill, I mean, isn't that one of the issues that the Democratic Party is now seen as being more elite? You guys are playing chess while the Republicans are playing cornhole. I mean, isn't that really where the divide is?
We go high has not worked so far. And
no, I agree, and I don't think it's not that I don't think we need to use different tactics. However, the fact of the matter is this: when we eliminate all traditional norms, when we decide we're going to throw all the rules out, the genie never gets back in the bottle.
Well, that may be true, but so what good does it do us if we sit by going high while the country goes into the toilet?
I'm not suggesting going high. We could put the picture up. I was a guy who was throwing tear gas canisters back at the police in the 70s.
I was going to say
that is where I come from, and I'm willing to do it again. I'm willing to get even more aggressive. The problem is I don't want to throw democracy and our republic out. That's what Trump's doing.
I get it.
Because where do we end up? Where does it end? Somebody tell me.
I get it.
Barb. Sure.
I go off on this little rant every week, so it's my time to do this. Democrats ignore half of the state of Michigan, and I'm not even talking about their own people. Tim Walz is a beloved governor of Minnesota because he went out into Minnesota, into the farmland, into the places where Democrats never go. And he talked to them and he asked them what their problems were. And they told him, and they said that they felt betrayed by the Democratic Party. They felt ignored by the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton never even came to Michigan, did she? She still
did. No, she did. I covered a rally at Wayne State where she
won. And Kamala Harris barely came here. They ignore the places where they haven't gotten votes. Not that many people voted at all, as has been pointed out. Why aren't the Democrats fanning out up there and talking to everybody and taking hard things? And a plug for my friend Steve Babson wrote a book called Forgotten Populists. Hold this up here. And it's about how it was the farmers and the Grange at the turn of the last century that helped pull people out of the Gilded Age and talking to people. Democrats don't talk to people. We talk down to people. We talk around people. But we don't talk to people. And if we don't learn that lesson in a big fucking hurry, we're going to be screwed. And I don't know if we'll ever get it back if we don't do that.
I was going to say, Trump went into the Arab community. Trump went into the black churches, not just the fancy black churches, but it went in and talked to people. We were at the Labor Day parade and Kamala was showing up, but they had her suddenly, instead of talking to the crowd and stuff, they had a sort of a special showing at one of the high schools where the elite group of people were invited. That was sort of the tone of that campaign, was that they insulated her. It took her so long to be able to handle questions from the press until the last month she finally got it together. But Trump went in and talked to the Arab community. He went into places that she should have been, and she opened it up for him.
Bill, last point.
Yeah. First of all, Trump lied to the Arab community. Trump lied to these black churches. But I agree with what Barb said. But I want to point out that we have had a number of Democratic senators who have done exactly what Barb suggested. They've been very successful. My dear friend Gary Peters is beloved throughout the state, and has gone out throughout the state and talked everywhere. The same with Alyssa Slotkin. I think that's why she won. And the same with Debbie Stabenow. I mean, Debbie Stabenow is revered by farmers in the state of Michigan.
And interesting that Slotkin will be giving the Democratic response at the State of the Union.
A big mistake, by the way. I mean, no one has ever fared well doing that. But
Well,
It's like
you know,
being
maybe
a
the,
drummer
maybe,
for
maybe the,
Spinal Tap.
maybe,
Am I
maybe
wrong,
the,
Devin?
Ooh.
Have you ever
maybe-
seen
maybe-
anybody use that as a stepping
Yeah,
stone?
not a bottle. Use a glass.
well, maybe use a glass next time instead of doing the Marco Rubio bottle.
Bill,
Allan,
it's got to be more. I'm sorry, real fast. It's got to be more than the elect. It's got to be operatives everywhere. They should be sending me up there. They should be sending you up there.
It's hard,
into
but
these
it's hard
places.
to organize in a place where people call you evil. I mean,
Right.
it's
why didn't you
Right.
come to my classes, Nancy?
It is hard. It is very hard. It's the only
Well,
way
now
we're
that we
going
have a new chair, maybe we
Yes.
can shift some of these ideas up there. And say,
There we go. All right, Allan.
But I want to make this point, if you don't mind, Barb. I was with Gary doing these during the Affordable Care Act passage, and he went around the state. I was with him going around the state defending the Affordable Care Act, and people swore at him. I wondered about our safety at some of these meetings.
Yeah.
And yet he sat down and he spoke. He took some of the most asinine questions and answered them respectfully and honestly. Look, I agree with you, but these people do it. But he has offices throughout, or has had offices throughout the state for that reason. I agree with you, but I'm saying there are Democrats who do it. We don't do it systematically enough.
but that's what they're supposed to do.
I agree.
Right. That's what they're supposed to do. That's what they signed up for. And real quickly, I know Saeed, you wanna move on, but I think both are right. I think there's still some. I was on the phone late last night talking to a top Democrat, and they're just still frustrated. They attended, last weekend. They thought some things were a little chaotic, maybe a little disorganized. But then I said at the same time, now you can't step away and keep saying the Democrats. You are a Democrat. If we are a Democrat, then we have to make the change. We got a new chair. Email, call, everything. You have, vice chair, second chair, do everything we have to do. And then now we have to start planning. We're into February, but we can't just be sitting back saying, okay, what happened last year? Last year it happened. Let's get a plan. Let's regroup, move a little bit, from the far left. And then let's be more boots on the ground. Let's go and listen. Let's do what we're supposed to do. Just totally throw the plan out and get a new damn plan.
Beverly,
Can I give you a segue, Saeed?
Yeah, well, Beverly, it took 2 hours. They were backlogged 2 hours to register and credential people at the convention. Bill,
Yeah, Barb. Toward Barb's point, I think that Whitmer's State of the State did a great job of doing exactly what you're talking about. She reached out to everybody in the state. People can criticize Whitmer all they want. They have. I have. I mean, I haven't liked everything that she's done. I think she's been an amazing governor. And I think that her saying, look, we have this gap with young white men especially young white men, not being able to afford homes, to being able to reach out to every group that was out there and speak to their needs, to say to the Democrats, there are some things we've done wrong,
right?
And look at the Republicans and say, don't I get an applause for that?
Right.
I think she was wonderful in that.
Yes.
And I think we are, to some extent, learning some of these lessons.
I hope so.
Okay, Allan, why don't we go to the last segment?
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Smart of the Week.
All right, so I'm actually going to start with you, Fish, because I think you might be coming up on your hour.
Pause the movie.
I have two. My first schmuck is Lee Chatfield, just from reading the newspaper.
Right.
I don't watch TV. Reading the newspaper about what was going on there and the amount of money that they were basically just stealing from people. It put him to the top right away. And my second one, kind of chiming in on what Bill said before, almost every week is John Roberts, because he was the one that presided over the Citizens United case, which in my view was more so than any other case, even including the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Citizens United screwed this country more than anything.
Yep.
So every time I think about, you watch Elon Musk doing what he's doing, I just think of John Roberts in that case. So he's my second schmuck of the week. It's a tie.
I think it's also, Allan, don't we have coverage of the relationship between Trump and Musk?
Yes, we do. Let me get that real quick here. Wait, hold on.
Such an insane idea. Just for starters, let's say everyone does respond. Who the f is going to read 2.4 million emails? I say this as someone who has an inbox with 2.4 million unread emails. Anyway, as shocking as this may be, federal workers do not seem very happy about being sent threatening emails, and they're making their voices heard in unusual ways.
I want to ask you about a fake video that was somehow hacked onto the TVs at the Housing and Urban Development offices this morning in D.C. It's pretty graphic, so we're not going to show it here on Top Story.
It's inappropriate and it's disrespectful. It should not be on TV. Let me just show you why it should not be on TV. Look at
my God. That does my little kid.
There you go.
This is what I mean about going low when they go low, we should go lower. Am I? That's
more creative. Come on.
I don't think you can get lower than the feet there, Nancy.
The Lincoln Project knew how to do it.
They were good.
The first time. The second time they were not as much a player.
Yeah.
Okay, Beverly.
Okay, my schmuck of the week is a little mayor who had her election this week in Dalton, Illinois, and she was surprised she lost. She thought she was going to be winning by a landslide. Her name is Tiffany Hinyard. I don't know if a lot of people, you guys probably have heard of her, but she came on my radar in December, and when I start watching their meetings, I mean, I've never seen in a long time. Trump probably would like her though, but disrespected the citizens, tell them to shut up, sit down, having fights under federal investigation. And she's really was surprised and really hurt Tuesday that she lost the election. She is my schmuck of the week.
How could it be? All right, Devin.
Well, I'm tempted to, as I said earlier, always make Vladimir Putin my schmuck of the week. Also, I guess we already talked about Jeff Bezos. So because he's destroying just a landmark newspaper in American history. But I was struck this week by the reporting, the SEC filings on Carlos Tavares leaving Stellantis with $24 million last year. Now, I don't usually, I'm as concerned about executive compensation as anybody else, but these guys don't pay themselves. So maybe it's a board that I'm upset with. But Tavares, and even though it was a third less than he made last year, but he leaves Stellantis with them at war with their suppliers, at war with their dealers, obviously at war with the unions. Wouldn't we all pay for a cage match between he and the UAW folks? But he never understood or valued the Jeep brand, one of the most powerful, meaningful brands in the world. And that old thing about, if you're at a campsite, you should leave it better than you found it. He did not leave Stellantis better than he found it, and he walks away with $24 million for his trouble.
Yeah.
So, there you go.
Good one.
All right, Barb.
Goody. Oxford Representative Josh Scrivener. Shriver, I'm sorry. Introduced a resolution urging the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn same-sex marriage. And he stood in a room by himself, almost by himself, except for my hero of the week, who is State Senator Jeremy Moss. Who is openly gay in a marriage, and this little incel stood there and complained about how gay marriage, or as we like to call it in Michigan, marriage, was hurting the citizens, and he got slapped down. So it's really dead on arrival is what it's called. They still had the stones. This guy's from Oxford, which has had enough bad publicity, you'd think, for a lifetime. But no, he continued and his wife is a sports employee of the high school, and who voted against any kind of gun control after the shooting. So, yep, Josh Shriver.
What an odious person, Bill.
Yeah, I apologize for this. I had to write some of this down, but mine this week, I have a terrible trioca of teas for my schmucks of the week. Andrew Tate, Tristan Tate, and Donald Trump. The trio are amongst the most vile, disgusting, misogynistic, and sexist individuals ever to walk the face of the planet. The Tate brothers, barred a few years back from every mainstream social media platform, including Twitter, something they have in common, by the way, with Trump, for spewing hate-filled rhetoric about women who believe that women are chattel, that they should be blamed for their for the sexual assaults committed against them, and urge men to be violent against women to put them in their place. This is not to ignore, by the way, their racist and xenophobic rants, but I wanted to focus on the sexist issues on this one. Elon Musk, in his infinite wisdom, the guy we're putting in charge of trimming down the government, decided, oh, these guys can be bad on X, and they now have 10 million followers. Now, these Tate boys, these wonderful kids, have joint U.S. and British citizenship. Until yesterday, these sweet boys were in Romania, charged with sexual assault and human trafficking, and not allowed to leave Romania. But in the president's great wisdom, he asked his special envoy, Richard Grenell, to object at the Munich Security Conference to the Romanian representative about these unfair travel restrictions. And now, lo and behold, where are these two fine fellows? In the state of Florida with their hero, Trump. How did they get there? Well, they have 10 million followers on their podcast. They have announced a number of times in the last few months, Trump is saving the world. And now, what did Trump do when he was asked about this at a press conference yesterday? Yeah. Just like the Proud Boys, just like Project 2025, and just like he said yesterday about calling Zelensky a dictator. I said that. I have no idea who these guys are. Yeah. So the president's special envoy apparently wasn't told by the president to do this. These guys are amazing. They belong together. And if anything points out where Trump is going with these people, this is it.
All right.
Andrew Tate says that you should break women's jaws because then they can't say anything while you're abusing them. He says that there's video.
I checked that particular one out, Barb. You got it slightly wrong. You should break their jaws if they ever accuse you of cheating.
That's it.
Okay. A subtle yet important distinction. Thank you, Bill.
They're lovely.
Nancy.
Okay. I know that the attorneys probably pay attention to who is the U.S. attorney at various key U.S. attorney offices, but the one in D.C., the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, is Edward R. Martin Jr., a man who would make an average toady cringe because his toadiness to Donald Trump goes so far beyond just simple, ass kissing and smooching up to the boss and whatever. It kind of defies belief. He's never been a prosecutor, so of course he's eminently qualified to be the U.S. attorney. But this week I had to laugh. He's going to file all the lawsuits that Donald Trump wants, for his own petty reasons. And he's the AP is of course suing the White House, I guess. I don't know, the administration to get back into the top tier press pool, and he's going to defend them. Edward Martin Jr. is going to defend them. But my favorite, he came up with this quote, which he put on X, and he said, "As President Trump's lawyers, we are proud to fight to protect his leadership as our president, and we are vigilant in standing against entities like the AP that refuse to put America first." Now, there's so many layers of humor and ridiculousness in this statement. I just have to laugh. First of all, a U.S. attorney is not the president's lawyer. They work for us, not for the president. We're vigilant in standing against entities like the AP. As a journalist, I've known many people who work for the AP, and the only thing I can tell you about their complaints about the AP is they always say, you can't spell cheap without AP. So, but the absolute cherry on shit Sunday was when he writes, "As President Trump's lawyers," and he puts the apostrophe on the wrong side of the S. So he can't even punctuate. So he doesn't even know how to indicate possession in a sentence. And I think that makes him just a perfect Trump appointee. And
the Associated Press having to fight to get back into that press room reminds me of the old Groucho Marx line about I wouldn't want to belong to any club that would have me as a member.
And I also heard another one, but my friends who worked for UPI before UPI went defunct would then reply to the AP complaint. You can't spell stupid without UPI. So there you go.
Joel.
Okay. Measles have been eradicated from the United States. There hadn't been a death in 10 years. And there was a death this week. And the parents, of course, didn't vaccinate their children. And my heart breaks for them. To lose a child is the worst thing you can possibly do. For those parents out there who haven't vaccinated their children, it's on you. You're responsible for that child. And those parents who won't vaccinate their children against measles, you're all schmucks. And you're just hurting your child and you're hurting the community that you live in. So please, this measles is the easiest contagious disease to get. And schmucks are the anti-vaxxers. This anti-science, anti-intellect, anti-reason philosophy has its limits. And when your child dies, I hope that's the limit. So to these people who simply don't believe in science and vaccines that have worked for God knows how long, they protected me and everybody on this panel, you're all schmucks.
Yeah.
Alan.
Just by the way, UPI is still in business. I think it was bought.
Yeah, but they're like Bell and Howell.
It's
They're like
lame.
a hollowed out content.
Yeah, it's lame.
Okay.
It's lame.
A
I worked for UPI one summer in Albuquerque in '81. Anyways,
I've heard that story.
You have, but the millions of people are watching have not, man. My schmucks, Marjorie Taylor Greene, for just saying what she said about federal workers. She's clueless that they actually help the government function. Also, Kash Patel, the new FBI director, who's he had a conference call this week with a lot of the regional officials around the country, and he was saying so much crazy shit. They didn't know what was real, what was not. And one of them is that he wants to improve the physical fitness of the agents. And as part of that, he's going to partnership with the UFC Cage Fighting League, and which happens to be, tied to Trump. And so, I'm sure they'll get a nice contract with the government. But anyways, that. And one last thing, Katie Austin Lee of Holland, Michigan, who stabbed her son to death, her 17-year-old son, because he had told her he did not want to live to 18. His birthday was this Saturday, and she's now charged with murder.
Oh my God!
All right. Well, I've got three schmucks. Republican.
We can have multiple schmucks now. This show's going to be 2 hours long by the time this is over.
All right, just for that, I'm going to slow roll for you.
Okay.
Slow roll. I like that.
Yeah. So we got Republican Congresswoman from Florida, Anna Paulina Luna, who has presented a bill to have President Trump placed on Mount Rushmore. His countenance, not him physically, just sort of mulling about on the top of the ledge. Congressman from Texas, also Republican Brandon Gill, who has issued a bill to rename John Foster Dulles International Airport, or IAD Airport, just outside Washington, D.C., their major international airport, to become the Donald J. Trump International Airport. Now, John Foster Dulles, the only good thing you can say about him is he was less odious than his brother Allan Dulles, who was the CIA director when he was Secretary of State under Eisenhower. But the two brothers helped to orchestrate several coups d'etat, including Mossadegh from Iran, Arbenz from Guatemala, yada, yada. And then also Republican Congresswoman from New York, Claudia Tenney, who has now is sponsoring a bill to make Donald J. Trump's birthday a federal holiday because it also coincides with Flag Day. Of course, lost on her is the fact that we just passed President's Day, which is a catch-all for all POTUS or POTI. But there you go. So, and Bill, I have to go ahead. I apologize. And I know you're boycotting Russian because of Putin, but it is Troika, not Trioka. So
Did I say Troika? I apologize. You're absolutely right. It is
Troika.
It is Troika, yes.
I
Because
also-
that's what I called that to you and Steve and Joel. So,
I also appreciated your attention to detail on coups d'etat rather than coup d'etats. Very nicely done.
Now you need to sit down with Lengel, who I tried to explain it's attorneys general and not attorney generals, and he refused to believe me.
Well, see, Devin, we have
I learned so much on
we
this
have a
show.
grammarian on the show, Nancy, who likes to crack the non-S&M whip every now and then.
Nancy, I believe you. I just don't like it. It's too odd an
She's
expression.
the grammarian, but we're contrarian.
If you're saying plural, it should be attorney generals.
All right. Well, listen, thank you again for a wonderful week, bringing some levity and diversity of opinion to another week of that was. Thank you, Devin Scillian. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. I should have waited to the end for him. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And thank you. And with the last word, always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Have a great weekend.